Hey, let's see. Hello, and thank you all for joining me. I'm Jennifer Smith, your friendly neighborhood naturopath. I am not a medical doctor, and this information has not been evaluated by the FDA. Therefore, it is not intended to cure, treat, prevent, or diagnose any disease. It is just for general educational purposes only. So please speak with your healthcare practitioner for advice specific to your unique condition. So, so today I'm going to talk about some strategies to promote clean energy through the mitochondria. So as usual, we've got 30 minutes of content followed by 9 minutes of Q&A that you can type into the chat. And that way I will try my best to wrap up in the magical number of 39 minutes. So anyway, energy is often looked upon as really just more of a reaction that happens quickly after getting exercise or consuming a stimulant like maybe coffee or an energy drink or even a drug like Adderall, like amphetamines, things like that. But we're here to talk about clean energy, and clean energy is something that's produced over time, typically using a combination of things. So, and having good, clean energy is really so much more than just merely gliding through your day with ease. In fact, it really means that you are without disease, really. And clean energy comes from having healthy mitochondria or mitochondrial function. And so we should have hundreds, if not thousands, of mitochondria per cell. Per cell. So if you think of that, all the trillions of cells that we have, hundreds, if not thousands, of mitochondria per cell. So in the mitochondria, you may remember this from biology class, but the mitochondria are the little like tube-shaped organelles that are known as the powerhouse of the cells, and they produce about 90% or more of the energy required for many different biochemical reactions found in the body. So such as like beta oxidation, which helps turn fat into fuel. So the mitochondria basically they convert nutrients from food into ATP. That's adenosine triphosphate, and you have to know that just ATP. That's our cellular fuel, and it also performs a myriad of other functions in the body, such as promoting apoptosis. So apoptosis is programmed cell death. So our cells are constantly turning over, and when they become like old and diseased, you want them to die off so new ones can form. And when you don't have apoptosis, that's when cancer forms. So, as you can see, the mitochondria and just having clean energy, it's very important. It has, many other functions other than just making you feel good and energetic. It goes much deeper than that. And, the heart really, of all the organs in the body, your heart has the highest concentration of mitochondria in it. But there are also some high concentrations in the brain. That's probably the second highest level, as well as the liver, and then, your skeletal muscles. And so it's probably no surprise that some of the diseases associated with poor mitochondrial function, or I should say mitochondrial dysfunction, fatigue syndrome, that's probably number one. Yeah, CFS, chronic fatigue, ALS, Alzheimer's and dementia, really a lot of neurological disorders, but Alzheimer's and dementia are the main ones, Parkinson's and as well. Cancer, I just mentioned, apoptosis. So if you're not, if apoptosis isn't occurring, that's when cancer forms, and the mitochondria plays a big role in that. Also, cardiovascular disease, because I just mentioned that the heart has the highest concentration of mitochondria. And then also hypothyroidism. But there are some other things, other like warning signs that you may have poor mitochondrial function. So some of those would be, just aside from like low energy, brain fog, poor circulation, like if you have cold hands and feet, muscle weakness. I mentioned just a moment ago that your skeletal muscles contain high concentrations of mitochondria. So if you have muscle weakness or, very slow recovery after a workout or just after exercise, that's kind of a warning sign, low metabolism, premature aging, and poor stamina, things like that. Even the ability to fight or the inability, I should say, to fight infections. Those are all kind of some of the warning signs that your mitochondria might be struggling. Mitochondrial function with some of those diseases that I mentioned, like ALS and cancer and chronic fatigue syndrome, that whole list that I just mentioned, in those cases, the mitochondrial function has been reduced by, up to 50%. So, I mean, I guess that would almost be the equivalent of trying to, I don't know, let's say you're trying to run a flashlight on, it's supposed to have four AA batteries and you only have four AAA batteries, or maybe you only have two AA's, something like that. Or maybe you're operating like a golf cart or something that runs on battery power, and when the battery's getting low, it just kind of starts to sputter and slow way down. That's really kind of the equivalent of those, mitochondrial function, those diseases that I just mentioned. Your body is just, really running on low energy. So as usual, I like to cover some of the things that contribute to poor mitochondrial function, and then we'll get to some of the things that help to improve mitochondrial function, because this is such an important topic. And again, it's not just about having low energy, but low energy is, I think, a bigger deal than what people give it credit for. It's not just about being tired. Anyway, as usual, it's a lot of the usual suspects that I often talk about when it comes to this. So, of course, at the top, you've always got certain pharmaceutical drugs that will contribute to poor mitochondrial function. And some of those include certain antibiotics, antidepressants, statin drugs, like for cholesterol. One of the main things with statin drugs is they deplete your CoQ10 levels. That's an important enzyme for the heart. And again, I just mentioned the heart has or should have the highest concentration of mitochondria. And you also may have heard that a big major side effect of statin drugs is muscle weakness. And again, I just mentioned there's a lot of a high concentration of mitochondria in your muscles, or there should be. Let's see, chemotherapy drugs. So if you know of anyone who's endured chemotherapy drugs, it's pretty common knowledge that they tend to have very, very low energy for, typically about 5 years after that. It just really drains them. So it's kind of notorious for that, unfortunately. NSAIDs, I talk about those a lot, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So we often don't think twice about popping, an Advil or a Aleve or something like that for a headache or for aches and pains, but they're really doing us longer term damage. Beta blockers for blood pressure can reduce mitochondrial function. And again, it's kind of funny. Some of the things that we think of that would help things like our heart are actually harming it in the long run. But epilepsy drugs, they're pretty damaging on a lot of different levels, and the mitochondria is just another one of them. And then also a lot of diabetes drugs, such as metformin, can contribute to poor mitochondrial function. Certain vaccines, the COVID shots were number one, the mRNA shots for causing poor mitochondrial dysfunction. And again, think back to that list of health conditions that I mentioned earlier. Lack of sleep, I think, is huge, because when we sleep, that is when the biggest portion of your mitogenesis takes place. Mitogenesis meaning mitochondria rebuilding, regrowth of new mitochondria. And so if you're not sleeping, that's not happening. And I talk about sleep so much. It's so important on so many levels. And so that's why if you don't get enough sleep, you wake up tired. But it's not just a superficial thing. It really goes at a deeper level, because you have missed a big window of mitogenesis. So you're behind the eight ball in the number of those thousands of mitochondria that you should have in your cells. Let's see what else. Sleep is a big one. One of the top for sure. Let's see, of course, nutrient deficiencies. I talk about that a lot. And B vitamins are one. If you do supplement with B vitamins, you probably know full well that, boy, if you take a quality like a B12 or a quality B complex, you're going to notice an energy boost fairly quickly, typically within, I don't know, about 10 minutes. So that's one. CoQ10 is another one that is depleted from a lot of pharmaceutical drugs. And I just mentioned a moment ago that statin drugs, one of the number one side effects of that for cholesterol is that it depletes your CoQ10, which then can lead to heart problems because of the mitochondrial dysfunction. A lot of pesticides also, and just overall environmental toxins will contribute to mitochondrial dysfunction. In heavy metals, which it all kind of comes together because a lot of pesticides contain heavy metals, and a lot of just environmental toxins in general contain heavy metals. So you may have heard there was a pretty big study that was done. I'm not sure how long ago, maybe about a year ago, and it was on people who lived close to golf courses. They had much higher rates of health conditions like ALS. And ALS was one of those diseases that I just mentioned that's directly related to poor mitochondrial function. Well, why is that? What would a golf course have to do with that? Well, to maintain those beautiful greens, they spray a lot of chemicals, a lot of pesticides and fertilizers out there. So, when you connect the dots, it all comes together and it all makes sense. But pesticides are a big one. There was also another study that was done. I'm not even sure how long ago this was. You can look it up. There were about 400 people in the study, and it showed that of those 400 people that they did blood work and urinalysis, hair, all kinds of testing on them. And they found that 100% of those people had an average of 97 toxins in their body, like known carcinogen, general toxins. So 100% had an average of 97. So that's huge. And I know all 400 of those people did not live near a golf course, but there are just so many different ways. I talk about that a lot. So not just outdoor toxins, but the toxins in your home. So just being mindful of what we clean our homes with, and the home furnishings that we select. Lots of decisions, that you can make there, to things to take into consideration. I know I mentioned a while ago that I recently bought new furniture, and one of my requirements is that furniture was not sprayed with flame retardant chemicals. So that would be an example. When I paint a room in our home, I use either non-VOC paint, or at the very least low VOC paint. So just making decisions like that, it all comes into play. It all counts. Seed oils and sugar. I know I talk about those a lot, but they can lead to mitochondrial dysfunction, and in turn, poor energy. Seed oils are pretty much in everything now. Anything processed. So processed food, anything with a label. In other words, if you buy a package of broccoli, it's not going to have an ingredients label. But if you buy a package of cookies or something else, it is going to have an ingredient label. So just making as much of your food as possible that you eat yourself, that makes a difference. And avoiding seed oils, which I talk about that ad nauseum. Corn, soy, canola, cottonseed oil, those are the main ones. They can certainly harm your mitochondria. Sedentary lifestyle, and you don't have to be crushing it at CrossFit, but just moving your body is huge. And when you're not doing that, that impairs your mitochondria. Alcohol consumption, excessive alcohol consumption, and chronic stress. Chronic stress is a big one as well, to harm your mitochondria. So how about we talk about ways to improve your mitochondria to result in improved energy and less disease? That's more fun. But obviously, just considering ways to avoid the aforementioned drugs and vaccines that I mentioned. So I often say that God has given us a natural alternative, or it's not even alternative. That I feel like the drugs and vaccines, they're the alternative. God's natural medicine, plant-based medicine, food, lifestyle habits, they were here first. So just using natural medicine and so many different forms of that, but just avoiding those that I mentioned earlier. Increasing your nutrient density, I talk about that a lot as well. Reducing your processed food consumption, getting an oil change, replacing those seed oils that I mentioned with healthier oils like extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil, maybe tallow, grass-fed butter, using those sort of things to cook with. I mentioned last week eating nose to tail, and that's something that's kind of, I feel like it's starting to come back in style a little bit because that's something that civilizations, and including here in America, we used to do that years ago. And it was really just, it was partially out of necessity, and it was also honoring the animal. And eating nose to tail, meaning eating organ meats and, consuming as much of the animal as possible, because that's where the highest amount of nutrient density lies. And as a matter of fact, I mentioned that the highest level of mitochondria, the highest concentration of mitochondria is found in the heart. Well, if you're maybe if you purchase a whole chicken and you're preparing that, eat the heart. I mean, that would just be an example. So if you consume, even liver or things like that, which I wish I liked it, but that's a high source of, a way to increase your mitochondria in your body. And let's see what else. I talked about the Mediterranean diet last week, or I know I've mentioned it many times before. If, I'm not a big fan of specific types of diets. I mean, people often ask me, what do you recommend? Do you recommend the vegan diet? Do you recommend the carnivore diet, this or that? And if I had to choose one, I would say the Mediterranean diet, which really is not even a diet. It's really just kind of common sense. It's whole foods. It's eating healthy things like wild caught salmon, which is rich in astaxanthin, an antioxidant that's especially good for increasing your mitochondrial function. And other fatty fish besides just wild caught salmon, but wild caught is the key. And then just if you're consuming animal protein, you want that to be grass-fed beef. You want it to be pastured organic chicken. Let's see what else. Vegetables, organic vegetables and fruit, and especially like superfoods. Superfoods are fruits and vegetables that are especially high in nutrient density, high in antioxidants that help feed your mitochondria. So some examples of superfoods would be blueberries, especially wild blueberries. So you'll notice the wild blueberries, they're real tiny compared to the large flat ones, the cultivated ones. And I mean, they're both healthy, but the wild blueberries are healthier. They're the ones that if you were to stick your hand in a bag of wild blueberries, your fingers are going to be stained because they're rich in anthocyanins. It's that pigment that I've talked about before that helps feed your mitochondria. And there are other foods that are rich in anthocyanins, like sweet potatoes. I mentioned that before. Pomegranates are incredible for the heart because they're good for the mitochondria. So they help increase mitochondria levels. And leafy greens, especially like kale, parsley is another one that's very high in compounds that let's see, make sure everybody's muted here, that help to kind of feed the mitochondria or nourish it. So just superfoods in general, there are a lot of them. When it comes to herbs, I like to touch on herbs, and I also like to take out a moment to mention that this is not medical advice again. So if you are on pharmaceutical drugs, make sure that some of these foods and herbs are not going to interact with the pharmaceuticals that you're on. So again, I'm just basically saying some things that are known to help improve mitochondrial function. How about that? But you do have to be especially careful if you're taking one or more pharmaceuticals, just to make sure there aren't any interactions, because there are a lot of things that can interact with drugs. So I often talk about adaptogenic herbs, and really pretty much all of them in the adaptogenic category are going to help to nourish the mitochondria. And, my personal favorite is Shizandra. I've mentioned that before. There's also ashwagandha, cordyceps, ginseng. Cordyceps is technically a mushroom, but it's in the adaptogenic category. Rhodiola. As a matter of fact, rhodiola is, all adaptogenic herbs have different additional superpowers. And I think I mentioned last week that Shizandra's superpower is it's especially good for the skin because it helps to cleanse the liver. And rhodiola's superpower is it helps, well, among other things, it helps to overcome, gosh, what do you call it? Oh gosh. Uh, Elevation, like elevation sickness. That's not the word I'm thinking of, but as a matter of fact, it only came out, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, that the Russian military had used the rhodiola herb, for many years to help them win battles that they really should have lost because they were severely outnumbered, but they were fighting at high elevation in the mountains, and they had rhodiola and their opponents did not. And so that's why it just helped them to overcome that elevation sickness, and help with oxygen absorption and mitochondrial function. So just some things to think about when it comes to different herbs. There are a lot of them out there, and there are also a lot of supplements that can help feed the mitochondria. Excuse me, if you're not getting them through foods. And probably the most well-known would be B vitamins, as I mentioned earlier, B12 primarily, or a quality B complex. And I'm all about quality, especially when it comes to supplements. And so if you're taking a B supplement like a B12, make sure that you're getting like methylcobalamin, or at least maybe a blend of methylcobalamin, adenosylcobalamin, hydroxycobalamin, something like that, as opposed to cyanocobalamin. Cyanocobalamin is the synthetic inferior form. It's actually derived from cyanide. So quality is key. So B vitamins, let's see, PQQ would be another one, especially the bio PQQ, again, not the synthetic. And CoQ10, I mentioned that earlier, which CoQ10, people who tend to be deficient in CoQ10 would be like vegans, tend to be deficient in CoQ10, and then also vegans and vegetarians, and then also people who take statin drugs for cholesterol, because statins are known to deplete CoQ10, which your mitochondria needs for that enzyme that powers your heart. So that's one that you may need to consider. NAD is another one, NAD plus particularly. There are different forms of it, but those are some supplements. And then exercise. I mentioned earlier that sedentary lifestyle will contribute to poor mitochondrial function. And so it goes to say that exercise will help with that. And it's pretty common knowledge that exercise helps to increase your energy levels, and just walking, but particularly when it comes to increasing mitochondrial function, HIIT training is especially good. So it might be like like just real quick surges of intensity. So it could be running uphill for just like 1 minute, or jumping for 1 minute, like jumping jacks also would be considered hit training, just really crushing it for like a minute solid, and then taking a break and then just doing it again. So high interval intensity training is what HIT stands for, by the way. It's two I's in it, high interval intensity training. So that's especially good for the mitochondria. And managing hydration, I'm not even sure if I mentioned poor hydration as harming the mitochondria, but it's so important to be well hydrated, and also consuming healthy water, healthy hydration, and also getting some healthy electrolytes, because one of the many things that impairs our hydration levels now that we didn't have to deal with in the past is EMFs. All of the what's the dirty electricity that's coming from our laptops and cell phones and Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi routers and smart appliances and LED lights, things like that, that impairs our hydration levels. And if your cells aren't hydrated, if your whole body's not hydrated, then your mitochondria and therefore your energy levels are going to suffer as a result. So, half your body weight in ounces is of clean water is a good rule of thumb, but I really should do an entire segment on just hydration, because there is more to it than just that, but that is just kind of a little rule of thumb. And then, of course, managing your sleep, because I mentioned that's when the absolute majority of mitogenesis takes place, is when we sleep. That's when your mitochondria reproduce, repair, and reproduce and regenerate. And so I talk about that a lot, about sleep hygiene, making sure that your bedroom is quiet and dark, and that you're sleeping on natural fibers, like cotton sheets, preferably organic, or linen, as opposed to like polyester, and that you're using a healthy, clean laundry detergent, that you're not washing it in chemicals and then breathing that in all night long. And also getting your 10 to 2. I talk about that a lot. So it's not just getting like a healthy 8 hours of sleep, or an 8 hours of sleep, but getting, quality versus quantity. So I've talked about before about that 10 to 2, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. are the hours that your body does the majority of its repair and regenerative process. So, in other words, if you don't go to bed until midnight, you've missed out on 50% of that intense healing, repair, regeneration process. So, getting your 10 to 2, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., that window, at least a few times a week is so helpful. You'll definitely benefit from that. So, again, that is, mitogenesis. That's when, tissues rebuild. It's when your liver dumps toxins. So many things happen during those hours. And then, of course, managing stress. To say that stress will kill you is almost an understatement, but chronic stress has a direct impact on your mitochondria. So, and again, it's not just about having low energy. I mean, it leads to so many other things. And you may have noticed it in your life in times where you've undergone stressful situations. You're just wiped out. And so it's definitely, stress is huge. So there are a lot of things you can do to manage stress. There are certain things that happen in life that we can't always control, but just keeping, healthy diet, doing some deep breathing, getting proper sleep, prayer, meditation, all those things, grounding, getting sunshine as well. That's another thing. All those things will contribute to lower stress levels and higher mitochondrial function. So I guess I'm finally kind of on time. Well, I'm not on time. I better kick it up a notch, but I love to talk patching, as you all know. And those of you who are new to this call, what I'm talking about are patches that you may see one here, but they're patches that are about the size of a quarter, and they're a form of wearable phototherapy that taps into your own body as the power source. And phototherapy has really increased in popularity over the last like 10 years in particular, but more and more all the time. And, that would be considered a form of exogenous phototherapy when you're standing in front of or inside of a phototherapy machine, or the use of a laser. But hospitals have used phototherapy for like 100 years, especially in the NICU for babies that are born premature or born with jaundice. They use it for things like that. Let's see, personal trainers use phototherapy, physical therapists use phototherapy to help people recover more quickly after an injury or to recover more quickly after a strenuous workout. And so, what we're talking about is a form of wearable phototherapy that taps into your own body as the power source. So, these patches are merely just reflecting back your own light rather than standing in front of an exogenous light. It's tapping into your endogenous light because we are light beings. We all emit light from our cells through our mitochondria, and from the moment of conception that happens. And so these patches are just tapping into that. Think of them as little mirrors on your body. And LifeWave makes 10 different patches, and you could the argument could be said that probably 4 or 5 of the patches at least contribute to healthy mitochondrial function, probably more than that even. But I'm going to focus on just 2 tonight, as to not overwhelm and to make the best use of our time. But the first one that I'm going to talk about is the energy enhancer. And this is the whole reason that LifeWave exists as a company today. David Schmidt, our inventor, our Nikola Tesla genius inventor who invented this technology, he holds over 200 patents. And the very first patches that he invented were actually for the Navy SEALs. And they were working on a project that a nuclear submarine project, one of those top secret black ops projects that required them to be awake and alert for at least 30 hours at a time. They had these long, grueling shifts. And so they were suffering because they were using amphetamines and caffeine and whatever they could to give them just the quick energy that they needed. But they were crashing, they were burning out, they were having health problems as a result. Because again, we're talking clean energy, and what they were using was not clean energy because they didn't have it available to them. So David got into the lab and he invented the energy enhancer patches. And so the energy enhancers are really different than the other patches that LifeWave makes. You'll notice that it is a 2-patch system. One patch looks like all the others. There's a white center, and the other patch has a tan center. And the way these work is you apply them bilaterally. So you'll see that I'm wearing energy enhancers. Guess I should have worn a different shirt, but you can see them on my wrists here a little bit. There, you can wear them maybe here, like below the clavicle. You can wear them on, the ankles, bottoms of the feet, different areas on the body, but bilaterally. And it's always white on right, tan on left. And I mentioned that these patches work a little differently than the others because they're tapping into not only the light that your body produces, but it's your own biofield. Your the polarity of your body. So half of your body carries a positive charge, and half of your body carries a negative charge. Therefore, the white patch carries a positive charge. The tan patch carries a negative charge, and so they are reflecting back wavelengths of light to trigger beta oxidation. That's one of those functions that I mentioned of the mitochondria. Therefore, the energy enhancer patches can help give you clean energy through the mitochondria. So beta oxidation just basically means that you're burning fat for fuel. And so as opposed to glucose. So there are a couple different forms of fuel that we use to produce ATP, our body's our currency, our cellular fuel. So I love the energy enhancers for that reason, to give you clean energy through the mitochondria. And again, it is a two-patch system, and you wear them just like the other patches, for 12 hours a day while you're fully hydrated. But the only difference is instead of one patch, you're going to be wearing two patches, white on right, tan on left. And so, fantastic patch. And that's, you may recall that the energy enhancer patches showed up at the 2004 Olympics, when Michael Phelps and some of the others, the judges noticed that they were wearing patches, and I didn't realize at the time what it was. Well, it was the energy enhancer patches. And because these patches are non-transdermal, they were allowed to maintain to keep their medals after that, because when the judges saw the patches, they thought, "Whoa, what is that?" They kept bringing home the gold, and the judges thought, "Well, they might be doping. We better test them." And they did, and they found nothing because the patches are all non-transdermal. So nothing foreign is entering the body. They're merely just reflecting back wavelengths of light that we all naturally emit to produce these beneficial changes in the body. They're considered chiral, meaning reflective. And then the other patch that I'm going to talk about, of course, is X39. I always say you can accomplish so much in the body with this one patch if you're patient, if you're consistent, and if you're hydrated. And the X39 patch elevates the GHK copper peptide in the body, which can help contribute to higher energy levels. It can help increase collagen production, promote increased wound healing. It resets over 4,000 of our genes to a younger, healthier state, and reactivates your dormant stem cells. We all have many, many stem cells in our bodies, but with age, over time, they've just slowed way down. And so the X39 patch just kind of wakes them back up and says, we need you to get back to work. We still have a lot of living to do. I need some energy to enjoy my life so that I can get exercise, which will help produce more mitochondria. I need to have fun with my children and my grandchildren, and I need to be able to garden, and I need to be pain-free. And one of the biggest side benefits, the quickest ones, I should say, or the number one most common of the X39 patch, is that people experience increased energy. And again, because all those different mechanisms, it gets down to a cellular level, and it's helping to give your body the tools that it needs to improve the health of your mitochondria. Again, the powerhouse of your cells. So, with that being said, I'm going to get to questions here, see if there are any in the chat. And I do want to remind you that if somebody else invited you to this call, please connect with them to purchase authentic LifeWave patches. They can help you to get authentic ones. There are some counterfeit ones out there because this has become so popular, and these patches can help do so much for the body. So they can help you get authentic patches and help you select the ones that might be best for you and at the right price. So let's see. We've got a shy bunch on here tonight. Let's see. Can you show again where you put it on your wrist? Yeah, let me see if I can unbutton my these are really tight buttons. I don't know if I can do that, but I've got them placed about 4 or 5 inches above my wrists. And if you can see there, so again, the white is on my right wrist. The tan energy enhancer patch is on my left wrist. So again, white on right, tan on left for the energy enhancers. And you'll receive a booklet when you purchase the energy enhancer patches with a list of placement recommendations. There are multiple. And I tend to rotate my energy enhancer patches. Sometimes I place them on the bottoms of my feet because that's a good way to kind of affect the whole body. I have seen professional athletes that oftentimes wear the energy enhancer patches here, kind of like below the clavicle, again, white on right, tan on left. And I often say that the patches, there are no side effects, but there are plenty of side benefits. And so one of the side benefits of the energy enhancer patches is that it helps to move the lymphatic system, which I've talked about before, because again, the lymphatic system is so important to help excrete toxins from the body, but it's only moving when you're moving. The lymphatic system doesn't have a pump. And so I oftentimes recommend that people, especially if wear the energy enhancer patches when they travel, because you may not think that you need extra energy when you travel, or maybe you do, we probably do, but if you're sitting on planes, trains, and automobiles for hours on end, think about that, what that does to your lymphatic system. And so the energy enhancers help move the lymphatic system and also help to improve respiration. So that's why sometimes you'll see where a football player, professional football player, makes a touchdown, or maybe a marathon winner crosses the finish line, or a soccer player, something like that. And they're so full of adrenaline, and sometimes they'll rip their shirt off. And there's oftentimes a photographer there to snap a picture, and you'll see energy enhancer patches placed right there. And so not only are they helping to give them clean energy that's, passes all the anti-doping standards, excuse me, or regulations, but also helping with respiration, helping with oxygen and moving the lymphatic system. So, but sometimes I wear my energy enhancers not only above the wrist, that's probably my favorite place, sometimes here. Sometimes on the bottoms of my feet. I also like to wear them kind of on the calves, a few inches below the kneecaps, kind of like about midway through the kneecaps and the ankles. That's another placement location. So multiple options there with the energy enhancer patches. So nothing else, no other questions. Would the energy enhancer patches help with lower leg swelling? I have heard of that before. So yes, as a matter of fact, a lot of people have reported that. And so part of it can depend on what's causing the leg swelling, but again, just to move the lymphatic system, you're going to benefit. You're going to benefit from that alone with the energy enhancer patches, because that is one of the many side benefits. So yeah, I would. Should you wear the energy enhancers every day? It is completely up to you. That is the beauty of these patches. I would say. With the X39 patch, because of the fact that it does so much for the body and it builds upon itself. Like I have been wearing this patch every single day for 3.5 years. And, things continue to improve. I noticed a few things that happened with my body. I think by day 4, I noticed increased energy. And of course, I thought, oh, it's just a coincidence. It's placebo effect, is what I told myself. But no, it wasn't at all. That was definitely a thing. I noticed improved eyesight probably 3 or 4 months later. I noticed my gums had I had some pockets in my upper left quadrant that like healed themselves. And I noticed my receding gums on my lower 4 teeth had resolved themselves as well. And that was probably, I noticed that at about the 7 or 8 month mark, something like that. So my point to this is I will never be without the X39 patch. I will wear this patch every day for the rest of my life. I am so grateful for this patch. The energy enhancer patches, you certainly can wear them every day. I tend to wear them Monday through Friday because that's when I feel I need the most energy. But again, this is going at a deeper level. It's clean, stimulant-free energy. So because of that, you certainly could wear them every day. Of course, absolutely. Let's see, anything else? No other questions in the chat. Okay, well, it's a small group tonight anyway, and So I do appreciate you joining me here, and hopefully you found this information helpful for gaining clean energy through the mitochondria because it's so important. It's so much more than meets the eye, and your energy levels are, a direct reflection sometimes of what else can be going on in the body. So if you've got low energy, that is a warning sign of so many other things. Here's to healthy, clean energy through the mitochondria, healthy levels of ATP. And I will be here next Wednesday. I will not be here the following Wednesday, but I'll be back next Wednesday live at 5 Eastern with another health topic. And I look forward to seeing you all then. Thanks again for joining me and have a good evening. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.